So why don't TCGs crash the way that some people often predict that they will? We're in one of those moments now. There's kind of a supply chokehold in Pokemon where it's possible to find product. People have kind of scalped it or hoarded it into closets. We're all kind of waiting for a big reprint to hit the market, and people are predicting when it does, it's going to be so earth shattering that it's going to be kind of a crash of the market, similar to comic book crash of the 90s, or the black and white comic crash of the 80s, trading card crash of the 80s, just these other artificial scarcity crashes that we've seen in the past. And it's something I totally get. It's a really weird, unique dynamic happening in supply and demand in TCGs. So it's something I was really worried about even when I first joined the hobby, because I've seen, as someone who is really into comic books, how these kind of speculative bubbles can have a huge ripple effect downstream for the people who just enjoy the hobby. But we often, in TCGs anyway, we see these sets, anything that kind of meets that description of like being in that chokehold period. They eventually, like, they will come back down to earth, sometimes well below MSRP once that reprint comes. And then slowly over time, eventually, they will creep back up to that previous high, and then slowly again over time, higher and higher. So why do these bubbles seem to deflate rather than pop? And does that mean that sealed boxes of TCGs are an investment? Well, let's get into it. It's again something I misunderstood for a bit, and I think if we demystified it a bit for the new TCG crowd, it would help all of us, whether you're a player, a collector, or someone who's into the commerce side of things, even. It would help all of us make much better decisions if we just understood the dynamic a bit better. So we have to analyze TCGs, identify one really key attribute that is shared throughout other collectibles, and then cover a few that, dare I say, might be unique to TCGs that we don't have a great comparison for in the rest of the collectible world. So let's jump right in here. We're starting with the familiar principle that you've seen in all collectibles. That is, when an item is supposed to be opened by its consumer and it becomes very popular and people open it, then the sealed version will become harder to come by. Toys is a really perfect example. There have been decades of history proving that people will pay a premium if something remains in a box or remains on the cardboard slab. If you're talking about a toy that's just on plastic and on a cardboard backing. Now, I know what you're thinking, Phil. This always blows up in people's faces. This stuff is never going to be worth anything, like ever, if they make that much of it. We're going to get there, I promise you. But we want to just start by discussing what that sealed element looks like in TCGs. And I'm going to use Pokemon as kind of my basis for a lot of this discussion because it's just what I'm used to, right? So it's just the lens that I'm using here. But it's a pretty linear process, right? If a set is popular, then packs are going to get opened. When people interact with the hobby as it's intended, cases get opened into booster boxes, get opened up into booster packs, get opened up into individual cards. On that last step is pretty important. We'll come back. But during normal times, the players who need play sets of certain cards, just like collectors who want certain chase cards or they want certain subsets that are in that sets theme or whatever it might be to fill out their binder, they all need packs to open. And during like the supply crunch times, rip and shippers still need packs to sell to degenerate gamblers. YouTube stars still need some crazy thumbnail of I opened this many packs or this many dollars worth that I burned to get you a really fun, entertaining video. All of that to say the tried and true principle of collectibles stays true. It dictates if something is popular, it gets opened, and that means its sealed form will demand a premium. And definitely that's a principle that I think most people understand, right? Is just the sealed aspect of it. And I won't necessarily get a whole lot of arguments from folks on that. So that leads us then to the distinction, our first distinction, I should say, for TCGs, because I know a lot of you are still doubting. I was still doubting too early on in my TCG adoption. But let me ask you this, something I wish I had asked myself at that time. Is there anything when it comes to a sealed toy, a sealed, G.I. Joe or Barbie or Pez dispenser or Furby, or if it isn't sealed, something that's just pristine, pristine comic, a pristine baby, Beanie Baby with the pristine tag. Is there anything about any of those items that might become more valuable if the person opened it? Or at all, is there any other collectible that has a variable experience when opening it? See, the baseline experience of opening any toy is having that toy now outside of the box. There's not really like a mystery of what that toy is or what's waiting for you in the box. And it most certainly won't ever increase in value. Anything that's seen as that collectible will always have the premium when it's in the box. So, what's to ever tempt someone to open that box? You might see where I'm going with this. There's the baseline experience with interacting with TCGs isn't just having an item outside of a box. It's having 10 to 15 individual slices of the item, small parts of the overall set, of the overall whole, so that you aren't ever expecting to get all of the experience at one time. Anyone who knows when they're opening a pack of TCG cards that they're going to get a random assortment, that there's going to be that variable experience every time. They just kind of hope that between either like the functionality of the cards, the monetary value of the cards, and just the fun that they had while they were opening it, that it will make up for whatever that dollar cost was to buy the pack of cards. Right? That means TCGs are the only collectible that transmute when they're opened. They become not the item outside of the box, but they become a fraction of a whole. So it doesn't become one thing, it becomes 12 of a larger thing that you never had inside the box. You might see again where this is going. So in the case that just to kind of solidify it for a Magic player, those packs are playable cards, right? They want to put them in a deck. They want to play them at Friday Night Magic or use them as bait for a trade or at the store or whatever it might be. For Pokemon collectors, because they're more collectors than players, those sealed packs transmute into filled gaps in a binder or a card that's now going to be graded and be inside of a piece of plastic. They serve a role that they serve a role that isn't always going to be fulfilled. You won't always have that card in there. It's Schrodinger's collectible. You don't know what the hell's in there. It hasn't transmuted yet. Does that make any sense? I don't know if I'm rambling or not, but in general, like that's a collector will put more of a premium on the opening experience because they are rolling the die. They're trying to hit a jackpot. Here's where you'll see the second main distinction that I've been kind of dancing around. It's called gambling. Um, I've referred to it on this and I think another video as a variable outcome or variable experience. You don't. have the same set experience as all of your friends do in a TCG. We joke about it sometimes that certain sets kicked our asses or that we did amazing, and then we were like, I'm not paying another fucking dime because I'm up on this set. There is no comparable um, one for one like that anywhere else in collecting, where there's this gambling roll of the die. Even in like the junk wax era of trading cards in the 80s and 90s, before they had this chase card element added in, like you could complete a whole set within like a case of cards. That's why the bottom fell out, is because there was nothing special amongst the boxes. You could open them and have the whole, but when you have these chase elements that are added proportional to the print size, you will always guarantee this variable outcome, this variable experience for opening up your product. Meaning, a huge amount of people will not get their monetary money back. If they did, people would never, you would spend nothing to roll the dice over and over again at a chance of a lottery. But most people don't get that. Most people get shafted. But I'm way off on a tangent. Let's go back to like those stacks of Death of Superman or anything that says, collector's edition right on the side of it, those Barbies or Beanie Babies. If they could, or if they don't suddenly become something else, nothing ever tempts someone to open them, right? But whoever stacks up boxes of a set of a TCG will hear the constant siren song of "Open me." The chase card is sitting right next to you. I'm right here. There's nothing in those millions of copies of like X-Men #1 that says, "Open me. I have a signature in here and you didn't know it yet until you open me." There is no blind bag gambling aspect to Tamagotchis or Tickle Me Elmos, but that like original first edition base set box that's got a Charizard in it, that alpha box that's got a Black Lotus in it. You've got to open that thing. They're kind of the OG. Give me the mystery box. A boat is just a boat, but a mystery box could be anything, even a boat. It gets people excited to think what could be inside that package. So then we return kind of to our hype scenario. And we've seen this before. It happened 2016 was the Pokemon Go kind of craze. I wasn't around for 2020. I was around for their catalysts that generate huge nostalgia and huge interest in the TCG, right, into the hobby. And again, I know Magic has had these periods too, just different catalysts, different like time frame, but they've had the same like growing pains and fits and starts of their market as well. But yeah, like I said, even those like the dud sets, the sets that didn't do well, they all got scooped up in those hype periods. All of their price tags increase. What's it say? A rising tide lifts all boats. So all of those went up with all the super modern product. Before I say anything else, I'm not at all trying to pretend like these people aren't hoarding product or that it isn't a problem or creating a strain on supply. It most obviously is. I only want to illustrate how it is that there's some things that seem to be the case that aren't necessarily happening long term. If you apply, I think it's like social media distortion or whatever verbiage they want to use for it. People like to illustrate something without it necessarily being the case in their everyday lives. So, like, say that scalper who takes a pic of their stacks and stacks of boxes, Right after they post it on social media, on Discord or the Pokemon investing subreddit or whatever, they grabbed a part of that pile that they actually had bought for their buddy. It wasn't actually theirs. They just put it in the pile for their picture, and they've got four of those boxes for their scalper buddy. Two of the boxes they actually sold yesterday on eBay, and they need to send them out, but they wanted to get them into the picture. And then like three of those boxes, they're like, "Oh well, fuck! I've already made this much money. I'm gonna open up a couple of boxes." So it's apparent that over time, in between these really gross pictures of hoarded cardboard, that it doesn't always necessarily stay hoarded. And again, I'm not trying to pretend like none of it is like it's all gone, blah blah blah. You better FOMO into something. I'm just saying that there are even during those like hype cycles, rip and shippers are able to pay a premium because they charge a premium. YouTubers can pay a premium because they're getting paid through views, through ad revenue, to be able to pay. It's the cost of doing business to just make your next video for them. So they're always going to be, at least for these two games that we know have a 30-year history of fandoms, they're going to be audiences. They're going to be some places where these folks are able to either sell or the temptation, the siren call of, oh, there's a box sitting next to you, will eventually have them opening up a couple of those boxes. And we've seen it before. Eventually, the printers, catch up. It even, I think, in the 2020 cycle, led to them buying their own printers. But I don't know enough about all of it. But it also didn't necessarily crash through the floor. It didn't go to zero like some people had said. There weren't mass bankruptcies. It kind of just slowly normalized. It because there wasn't as much product still existing. It wasn't just that there was product sitting on the sidelines, that there was product out of the market. It's that there was product out of existence by that point, that you need to replace sealed product because there's again something tempting you to open it. And when you opened it, you didn't get your item. The item wasn't actually in the box. So you got to open more and more boxes. See, that's people I think are underestimating the allure of gambling this whole damn time and how many of these fucking boxes end up just getting fucking ripped rather than staying in that closet for 5 to 10 years like they say they're going to do. And when it gets really bad, if it really does plummet down to the ground, there are legitimate players and collectors who have been licking their chops waiting for that moment to come along. And they're going to open up those damn boxes. It could be, again, an absolute turd of a set, and if it gets to a low enough price, some folks are gonna say, "Shit, at that price? Hell yeah, I'm gonna open a box. Send them over my way." So as long as the game survives at all, maintains enough of their players and collectors, then overall there's always going to be that deflate rather than a pop. Um, because again, that overall supply of sealed always decreases over time. It would pop. It would be, earth-shattering kaboom, so to speak, if nobody actually wanted to open the boxes. If they weren't being opened at all in the meantime, that's when there would be a crash, and generally, that's when sincere interest in the game actually plummets. TCG crashes happen all the time. It's literally every other TCG other than Magic and Pokemon over the last 30 years. I mean, with exceptions, obviously, Yu-Gi-Oh! Hats off to them for even without being able to like expand greatly, survive this long because it's just not an easy thing to do. TCGs, period, are bubbles. They're fake rarity slots. The people who make these games determine how many rare cards are out there. They're always artificial scarcities. they're always bubbles. They're collectibles by nature. They aren't a performative asset. They only mean they only have any value because someone cares about the piece of cardboard. It's only worth what someone's willing to pay for it. So that's before you go and thinking, well, forget like this is blowing up in people's faces. You're telling me I need to plunk my money down. Remember that the more people who are hoarding that supply, the slower it's going to be for that value decline. And this, I'm not trying to be mean, but I see a lot of people misunderstanding TCGs as being an investment rather than a business opportunity, maybe. Like if you have an item that supply can be readily supplied by a manufacturer, a single manufacturer, and the value is just derived from the audience of that item, you're describing a collectible, and that's fine. But there are just different risks and different strengths to a speculative collectible compared to an investment. Unlike an investment where their performance is tied to like the asset, the underlying asset, collectibles are only worth what someone is willing to pay for it. That is the thing you have to remember before you get into too much trouble in putting your money into a collectible. They're only worth what someone is willing to pay for it. But I mean, it's so easy, not easy. It is more possible than ever to start like an online wholesale business or even a retail, like a brick and mortar store surrounding TCGs. There's more genuine interest in TCGs than ever. And I think that's what a lot of folks do is find a way to turn a hobby into a business. And that's great. That's awesome. But you're moving inventory. You're not stacking shares of a company. So you can start a business. You also, if you're a player or a collector, you can use the knowledge of these same dynamics to just help pay for a bit of the hobby that you're participating in. But you can't rely on like sealed boxes as an investment class. If you know that dynamic again of how supply and demand works in general, but how that dwindling supply of TCGs works, there's definitely chances where you can have the hobby pay for itself, or where you can find yourself able to start a business off of much less capital than you might expect that you would need, just with patience over time. Both of those statements are true without cardboard being an investment. Um, because, yeah, if you think any of this is me like bashing on someone who wants to make money off cardboard, I assure you that's not the case. I'm someone who's made a bit of money off of speculating on comics and speculating on a little bit of Pokemon that I sold once all you people went crazy and wanted to pay way too much for some Lost Origin stuff. All right, so here's like the full dynamic to kind of simply put it all. If TCG has players or even just collectors who want to open sealed product, then every single day that passes, there will be more packs opened, right? And fewer in existence, not fewer in the market, fewer in existence. More single cards will come onto the market. And if a set is printed into the ground and it's hoarded in half of the fan base's closet, well, if fans still like the game, then every day the sirens call of that shiny cardboard will ensure that less and less sealed product exists every day and more single cards exist every single day. Um, Eventually, this is where most people get this is where most people get completely tripped up because there's a detachment that happens. Eventually, the sealed product's value becomes detached from the value of the contents the potential contents inside of the box. And that is where a lot of people go, nope, doesn't make any sense. That shouldn't be whatsoever. The reason that happens is because generally at that point in time, there is so little of that sealed product that still exists that you're not pricing it based on what you could get if you open it. You're pricing it based on how much of it exists, period. The sealed box has become its own form of collectible. It's not an investable. It's not something that performs in any way. There's no underlying asset here, but it is its own form of collectible. It is something that is desired for its own existence and has its own supply and demand dynamic outside of even the cards that would be in it. Once enough time has passed, again, if I'm buying something, let's say from like the black and white era of Pokemon, I'm not buying that for the kinetic energy that lies within the packs. I'm buying it for the potential energy that it represents. If that makes sense at all. If I haven't just rambled through all of this. It's and I could be completely dead wrong. Um Everything could play out in a way that is different from how it's played out in the past. If literally everybody put 2, 3 boxes of the next Pokemon set in their closet, then of course it's not going to go up over time. No one's gonna be, looking to open it. We all bought it just as an investment to sit in our closet. And who are we gonna sell it to? Everyone has 3 boxes of this fucking there's no it's a paperweight at that point. Um, so of course it's not an investment. But if you are interested in how those dynamics work and how you can use those dynamics to make a little bit of extra money and again, either have this hobby pay for part of itself or even find a way to, if you're really, really into TCGs, find a living doing something that you enjoy. Fuck yeah, subscribe right now. Hit the like. You're going to get a whole bunch of great information. You're going to get me with a hoarse voice. You're going to get the best of TCG content. Because here at Inkblot Cardboards, we always remind you TCGs are whatever you make of them. Thank you. I love you. Goodbye.